Good morning. Happy Monday, Mentor. I'm Jenn Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and create empowered teams. And today, we are going to talk about how to improve your team communication. So sometimes we think team communication just happens, or sometimes we think that's the job of somebody else. And really, there is one person that you can control, and that is you. And that is the person who can make a huge difference on your team's communication, if you are the leader or if you are just a member. So today is a mini workshop. I normally am here live, but I've actually pre-recorded this for you today because currently at this moment, I am on a plane to a speaking event when you see this. So I wanted to make sure that you had some really great help on how to really improve your team communication. So everybody loves an agenda. So we're going to start with what we're going to talk about today, so you know what you're getting into. So the first thing is we're going to talk about what is communication, just some communication basics, because we talk about this word and I don't think we always know what it means. So I always like to define the terms so we're on the same page. Second is we're going to talk about what are the costs of miscommunication. In your team, there are tangible and intangible costs when miscommunication happens. So what are those costs? And then what are the 3 steps that you can do to help you really improve your team communication? When I do this workshop with teams, there are 5, but we're only going to get to 3 today because this is a mini workshop. But there is some lots of juicy stuff for you today. So we're going to dive right in. If you are here live, I'd love for you to tell me that you're here live. If you're catching the replay, tell me you're catching the replay. I will come back and make sure we're answering questions. And so you've got some great material to take back to your life right after this. So you can apply this today. So we're going to start with what is communication and who are the communication players? What's involved in clear communication and what causes problems? So this is a basic communication model. If you took Communication 101 back in college, you may have seen this model, but it's really important for us to remember what is happening in communication. So first of all, the goal of communication is always to create shared meaning. That's our goal. So you've got 2 messengers or more. You've got 2 messengers or more. And so what we're doing is this person here is encoding a message, encoding a message, meaning something in their brain, and they are trying to communicate that to the other person. The other person is decoding that message and creating meaning for themselves. And what we want is the meaning this person encoded and this person decoded to be the same. So what's the problem? Well, there's all kinds of noise in between. There's all kinds of noise. Sometimes it is literal noise, like things that are happening in your environment, but it is also the filters through which we understand information. There are language and vocabulary noise. There is bias in unconscious and conscious bias. There is our motivation, our personality. All of those things get in the way of clear communication. So rather than, sometimes I think we blame people for miscommunication, when we move to a space of problem solving and understanding, oh wait, there's noise. How can we decrease the noise and increase shared meaning? That changes how we think about communication. So I'd love to know, if you're watching in the comments, what this means to you. If you've ever seen this model before, or what does it mean to move communication out of the realm of, they're just a bad communicator, or why is communication so bad, into, well, how can we figure this out? What's the noise and what's the shared meaning we're trying to create? So whenever we come back to communication, I always like to start with this, that we are trying to create shared meaning between 2 or among more people, trying to create shared meaning. That's communication basics. So now let's talk about the costs of miscommunication. So I just want you to guess in the comments. I want you to tell me, how much time per week do you think is squandered in miscommunication and unresolved conflict? Just take a guess. Do you think it's an hour? Do you think it's 3 hours? Do you think it's 5 hours? How much time do you think we waste and squander in miscommunication? Well, I will tell you, it's 3 hours a week. It's 3 hours a week that we spend during a work week. So that's like a 40-hour work week. We're wasting almost 10% of a 40-hour work week involved in miscommunication. So what are you doing during that miscommunication time? What's happening? So what's happening during those 3 hours? It's distraction. It's over communicating in an unhelpful way, meaning giving too much context, too much information that doesn't have a good place. Sometimes it's defensiveness, like, well, I did this. Sometimes it's disengagement, just like, whatever, I'm just going to let this person talk and I'm going to check out. Sometimes it's lack of creative energy. You've spent all this time in miscommunication. It's taken up too much brain space for you to creatively apply to your work, coming up with innovation, coming up with new solutions, or creating a space. If you're a creative, actually creating. Maybe it's you could have come up with a new process, but you don't have enough creative energy because you're spending this time in lack of creative energy. And the last one is toxicity. Toxicity happens when there's an excessive amount of miscommunication because we can't figure out where we're going, and then it gets personal. And that's when it turns toxic because it's a vicious cycle. That's what's happening during this 3 hours. So sometimes it's helpful to think about costs, not just in like time, but what does it cost in money? What does that cost in US dollars? So if we're thinking about compensation, and just a little bit of math based on the average compensation of US data, the amount of time that you waste per year is this much money. Well, actually, before I tell you, I want you to guess in the comments. How much money is that? $6,500 a year per person. Yeah, $6,500 a year. But wait, just a second. We've got some more math. Because communication is not just one person. The cost is not a singular person. That is like per employee. Communication is a collective experience, and that means there's a collective cost. And that collective cost is $767 billion a year. I mean, tell me in the comments, is that shocking? I mean, I just even think that is hard to comprehend on a global scale. So let's bring it down to a 200-person organization. If a 200-person organization is wasting 3 hours a week and we have the average compensation in the US, it's $1.3 million per year. What could your organization do with $1.3 million a year? So, but we all know that costs aren't just dollars. There's more. What are the emotional costs? What do you think the emotional costs are to miscommunication? I'd love for you to tell me in the comments. What does it cost you? What are these emotional costs? You feel frustrated. You probably feel disappointed. You may even feel shame. There are all kinds of emotional costs to miscommunication, especially if you're thinking about communication as a personal experience and you're taking it in a way that means I'm the problem rather than what can I do to be a part of the solution. So when we think about this communication, what is the one person that you can control? What's the one person you can control? That's right. It's you. So if you've been kind of switch tasking, you're going back and forth during our little mini workshop, I want you to come back to me for a second, because I want you to know I am 100% confident that you can learn how to communicate better. We've talked about who are the players and we've talked about what are the costs, but communication is an ongoing improvement and you can do that work. So I'm going to show you that there are 5 must-haves to good communication. And I call them keeping it clean. So first we're going to talk about being clear, and then you're going to listen with curiosity and have emotional regulation. Now, I told you at the front, we're only going to do 3 today, but I am going to share with you the full 5 because wait, how do you finish the word clean? So we're going to keep it clean by being clear. You're going to listen with curiosity, practicing emotional regulation, using absorbing stories, and nonverbal alignment. So we're going to talk about these 3 today: keeping it clear, listening with curiosity, and practicing emotional regulation. This is the focus of our workshop. So you might want to get out a pen and paper, take some notes, tell me in the comments right now which one you're thinking you're like, ooh, that's the one I need to get better at. Just let me know. So I'm going to start with right now, this laundry. Okay, so this is a live picture of the laundry situation happening in this corner cupboard right over here in my upstairs linen closet. So I pretty much hate laundry. And so to avoid doing laundry as much as I can, I have outsourced it to my children. Okay, so part of it is so that they learn, but part of it is I don't have to do it and they become responsible adults. It's a win-win. And most of the time I have pretty low expectations about how they put it away. Clean and put it away. If you want to roll your clothes in balls, if you want to walk on it and walk around your school crinkly and wrinkly, that's all on you. But there are a few places, such as this particular cupboard in our house, where if we don't put it away in a certain way, it's like the Mount Vesuvius of laundry falls out. And you have to fold the towels just right, and the sheets have to go in a certain way. Otherwise, it sort of looks like this, but usually it's worse. And so I have to get face to face with my family and not grumble and not be the martyr, like, why can't you figure this out? Or complaining why they don't know how to do anything. It's a kindness to them to clarify my expectations. And that is why Brene Brown says clear is kind. And when we clarify our expectations, here's what I'm expecting in this location, in this space. It is a kindness. Patrick Lencioni is an organizational health expert, and he has 4 steps to healthy cultures. Steps 2 through 4 are create clarity, over-communicate clarity, and clarify the clarity. So clear is an important part of communication. And one way to think about that is, what does finished look like? Another Brene Brown quote is to paint done. So when I'm clarifying the expectations of here's how we fold the towels and here's how we put it away on the shelves, I am painting a picture of what finished looks like. So when you are communicating with your team and you get to the end of that meeting, clarify, here's what I think finished looks like. And be very specific. And you can even ask for feedback. So what do you think? What are you thinking finished looks like? Ask in your team, and you will start to create the shared meaning and lose a lot of noise when you're going for clarity. So clear is kind. Making sure your communication is clear is the first step to avoiding miscommunication. All right, step 2. So if you've been around me for a minute or you follow me on Instagram, you probably know that Ted Lasso is probably the most perfect show. I love it. It's not just the British humor or the relentless positivity of Ted Lasso or being a Kansas City native like me and who's been dropped into a British town to coach football, soccer. It's the fable of each episode that I really, really love. So there's a jilted wife who takes over ownership of this football club from her serial cheating ex-husband. And the ex continues to weasel his way into the owner's box, literally and figuratively. So finally, there is this pub showdown right here. So Ted Lasso is the one with the stash. That's who he is. And the ex is challenging him to a game of darts. And in this challenge, Ted is like this aw shucks folksy coach in this game of darts. And it's 10,000 pounds to the winner. That's what Rupert, who is the older gentleman, that's what he says. And so if Rupert wins, Ted counters. He's like, wait, if you win, I'll give you your $10,000. But if I win, how about this? I will get you to choose the student starting lineups. That's what Rupert wants. And Ted says, wait, if I win, you can't go anywhere near the owner's box. So if Rupert wins, he gets to pick the starting lineups. If the coach wins, the X can't go anywhere near the owner's box. So at this point, the X pulls out his silver dart kit, and Ted pulls this whole like Inigo Montoya things, like, oh, I forgot I'm not left-handed, and starts shooting. And all of a sudden, it's a really, really close game. And Ted makes this amazing point. He starts to say and begins to wonder out loud about curiosity. And he says, people have misjudged me my whole life. And I think if they were curious, they would have asked questions. And questions like, have you played a lot of darts, Ted? To which I would have responded, yes, every Sunday afternoon at a sports bar with my father from the age of 10 till he was 16 when I passed away. And in that moment, Ted takes a deep breath and he pauses and he says, barbecue sauce. And he lands the dart. Now, here's the important thing to know. Curiosity changes how you listen. Because when we listen with curiosity, we remove the judgment. So here's how you start to listen with curiosity, because no one likes a gotcha. Nobody likes that, like, I'm going to set you up. But we want to hear not only the words, but what's behind the words. That's what happens when you listen with curiosity and wonder. So here's what you need to start to do. 1, notice your own thoughts. Are they wandering away? Are you thinking about the email you need to send, or what you need to say next, what you need to prove, what's for lunch? You need to first starting to notice your own thoughts and manage them. And then next, to listen with curiosity, step 2 is to avoid assumptions. If you were making an assumption, excuse me, turn it into a theory or a story. So the theory I'm going with is blank, or the story I'm telling myself is blank. That's how you avoid assumptions. And then next, use the word curious. Use it. I'm curious about what? I'm wondering about how. When you start to phrase things like this and you're listening with curiosity, it changes how you listen. And it removes some judgment and gets you into the shared meaning. So clarity, listening with curiosity, and then number 3, emotions. So emotions are vital to our relationships, the connections and decision making. And emotions are important data points when you are experiencing a hard conversation or trying to go through some kind of difficult miscommunication, because we are actually feeling beings who think. We're not just robots who have a brain and then a body and emotions. We are feeling bodies who think. That's the last thing we do. Emotional regulation is the ability to notice and manage our emotional responses, because sometimes we have triggers and we've got these actions that are triggered by emotions, or we don't do something because it's triggered by emotions, or we can modulate our responses through triggered emotions. And if we're just reacting, it feels like this flood of emotions. Or if we're just pulled back, it can feel that way too, because the flood of emotions are inside of us. What we want to create is a canal. We want to modulate our emotions so we're allowing to experience the emotions, but then they're passing through us. So we want to create that space like a canal versus just this overwhelming flood of emotions. That's practicing emotional regulation. So the way that I like to do this is my favorite one that I work through with people and clients is I call it name, rate, find. And if you've been in some of my workshops, I recently, even with a large owner operator conference, I was talking about this. And so name your emotion accurately. Are you frustrated? Are you disappointed? Are you annoyed? Are you irritated? Do you feel disrespected? Do you feel sidelined? Do you feel disengaged? What's the emotion? Give it a name. And then 2, rate it. on a scale from 1 to 10, how intensely are you feeling this emotion? 1 being, oh yeah, it's just there. 10 being, I am losing it. Like it is completely overwhelming. How intensely are you feeling it? And then number 3, find it in your body. Where does this emotion exist within you? Is it in your stomach? Is it behind your jaw? Is it in your chest? Where are you feeling that emotion? That will bring you back into your body and actually give you the power to move from this like flood of emotions into a canal that helps you communicate more clearly. So, all of this is a way for you to better communicate with your team. So, first, you want to be clear in your team communication. Then, you want to practice curiosity. And then, 3, you want to practice emotional regulation. This will help you immensely improve your team communication and maybe get back some of the 3 hours that you were spending being disengaged or frustrated in ways that weren't productive. Team communication changes how your team operates together, and it helps everybody come to work. So I'm curious in the comments if you've ever been able to practice this, or what do you think are the challenges to communicating like this on your team? I'd love to know in the comments. I think the one that I hear the most from teams that I work with is that we just don't have that kind of time. So I want to bring you back to, if you're wasting 3 hours a week, frustrated, disengaged, and losing money because of miscommunication, what if you spent a little bit of time up front practicing clean communication where everything actually starts to move smoother? Just because this is what you're used to wasting time on doesn't mean there's not a better way to spend your time. I want to encourage you with that today, because you can 100% build better communication skills for yourself and better communication practices for your whole team. And if you are interested to talk about that with your team, I would love to see what you're struggling with specifically and maybe help you have a training around how can we do this better as a team and get back some of that time and money, but also those emotional costs. Those emotional costs go down so you can start to not only be effective and productive, but that work is a place that you really enjoy coming to work, that people feel like they're connected and there's a sense of belonging and purpose to what you're doing. So I hope that you will join me in that. If you want to go right here, boop, and we can have a conversation. You can go to jennwhitmer.com/speaking, and that's a great way for us to communicate together. I hope this was helpful for you today, and I will see you next week. Diana Wang Feng will be here, and she's going to be talking about systems and processes. Whew, it's going to be so good. All right, everybody, have a great day. Bye.